Good morning, mga ka-offbeat, no? We're very excited today because nandito tayo on-site shoot, Matt, no? We're actually doing an on-site shoot with a guest for Project Offbeat. Baka dati meron na tayong on-site guest, pero ito talaga, we needed a room because medyo big time yung guest natin ngayon. Medyo big time yung guest natin ngayon, no? So, anyways, mga ka-offbeat, you know the drill. This is the podcast where we talk about the offbeaten careers. Wherein marami sa atin nagtitake up ng corporate path. But what we want to feature here are those that took the off-the-beaten path. Diba? A career that may or may not be, as known to others, no? So anyways, Matt, today's guest is a very special guest, no?
Okay.
Only because this guy was my professor. My professor from before, no? Honestly, Matt, nung sumama ako sa class na to, nitong professor na to, I didn't even know what I was doing. No? I was just looking for an elective to fill up my IPS, di ba? But you know what? It ended up with being an accident, but I never forgot about it. No? So, ayun. In today's episode, we are featuring a wonderful guest that will take us through the world and career of anthropology.
Anthropology.
Big word, right? Later, let's unpack that. But right now, anthropologist yung i-guess natin, mga ka-offbeat. We've had guests before in the spectrum of this career. Sir Ampeto Campo, of public historian.
Yeah.
Sir Richard Chu of I think culture historian, right?
Yeah.
So now, anthropology, diba? So pahirap yung guest natin, no? Pahirap ng guest, right? But yeah, today's guest is an expert in the Filipino heritage and identity, right? So our guest is a lot of things, Matt. A legend professor in the Ateneo department. And he is well known to be this one that also leads the Ateneo Social and Cultural Laboratory, right? And he's also the author of the book, Authentic But Not Exotic. And this book actually won the National Book Award last 2006. Heavy credentials, diba? Heavy credentials. So without further ado, guys, our guest today is Professor Dr. Fernando Zialcita, or as people fondly call him, Doc Z. Okay, so we'll be calling him Doc Z in this episode. And he joins us in the Project Offbeat podcast today to talk about the career of anthropology. Doc Z, welcome to the show. Kamusta ka?
Mabuti naman. Thank you for inviting me.
Ayun.
It's a joy to be with you again as a former student.
Grabe. Matt, medyo I didn't expect this na ma-achieve natin to sa buhay, no? Being able to talk to our professors, no? Sige, Doc Z, I think let's start with your being an anthropologist, no? Para sa mga commoners or sa mga layman people, no? That does not know about anything about this career. What is anthropology? Diba? In a nutshell.
Anthropology, ang pinag-aralan niya ang kultura, kalinangan, ang pamumuhay ng tao. Now, this sounds absurd. Why are you going to study pamumuhay ng tao? Because it's important to understand how people actually live. Kasi, just to give you an example, may implication ng anthropology sa corporate world.
Oh, talaga. Okay.
Halimbawa, there are different ways of studying workers in a business. Either you do survey or you do anthropology, which is very qualitative. You study how people are actually working in an office.
Ooh, okay.
Like one time, I was doing study for an office in Makati. They wanted to understand how a particular product was being used in Mindanao. So they sent me to Mindanao. I stayed with some people for a couple of days to see how they used a particular product from morning till midnight.
May ganun pala, no? Yung pag-study ng culture ng tao.
Anthropology of business, yeah.
Right. Doc, why is it important that people look into culture as well? I mean, marami kaming guests, no? Corporate guys makes money, a lot of money, right? But why is it important to also look into someone's culture like the people like an anthropologist do?
Kasi ang culture kasi siya nagbibigay ng balangkas to our life. In other words, what you find meaningful is derived from culture. Lasa, halimbawa, you're so used to this in my class, di ba? Taste, hearing, sound. All of these are made meaningful for us by our culture. So, like in that particular case, I wanted to find out ano talagang preference niya when she drinks alcohol.
Okay.
Anong particular brand at paano niya ginagamit? What is it associated with? Is it associated with being a woman, being a man, or being macho, or what? Yeah.
Grabe, no?
Actually, I kind of have similar, kasi I came from like the market research industry. And medyo ganon rin yung,
Taga Nielsen to.
so medyo ganon rin yung pagka-research namin because we kind of just look into why does this particular group, like let's say segment, sec CD, why do they like
Do
this
that.
particular,
Correct.
is there something in their behavior? Is there something that they do on a daily basis? So we kind of look into that. So parang medyo may pagka-anthropology na rin siya.
Yeah.
Actually, Doc, when we were researching you for this interview, we saw that you have a specialized on heritage and identity. How would you kind of describe that in your own words? Because, heritage is such a big word, but do we really know what heritage means, diba? Kasi parang identity is like, okay, we get that. But heritage, how would you describe it?
Ang heritage is more selective than culture. Ang kultura kasi yun ang kabuuan, no? It's life as you live it in your own particular community. Heritage, namimili ka eh. To give an example, no? This is something that students enjoy because I tell them, okay, yung tattooing, modern, people go all the way to Kalinga.
Yeah.
But actually, we're being selective when we say heritage natin to because tattooing was associated with headhunting. But we don't... Yeah, we don't...
Yeah.
We don't think of that anymore when we tattoo because what we appreciate is the design and the fact that it's associated with strength. So heritage is selective, and its heritage is important because it helps brand.
Yeah.
It gives a country its brand image. So what you do in heritage, you select those qualities in your culture that you want people to remember you with.
Yeah. Is that subject to bias, Doc? Kasi,
Of course, it's biased, pero kasi each generation naman has its own bias. So you have to always think, what do you want to do today? Example of heritage nga pala yung sa samurai, di ba? Mga anime films, it's all about samurai.
Yeah.
But if you look at the samurai tradition, bloody, what we're doing is it's actually just what the Japanese are doing is they're just selecting elements from their samurai tradition. Bushido, Code of Honor. Nakalimutan na yung constant war between the daimyo pala, and their samurai followers. We're being selective lang.
Correct.
So parang heritage, is it kind of like nitpicking the good stuff na
It has, yeah.
parang it will have the brand.
It's important kasi every people kasi has to have an image of itself to project to the others. And heritage helps you do that.
Right.
It helps create a brand.
Okay. Ito, Doc. So, na-mention ko kanina, Doc, we had a previous guest na nag-specialize siya sa Filipino-Chinese culture.
Yes.
Yung sa inyo, Doc, your specialization, parang Filipino heritage talaga.
Yes. Which also includes Chinese.
May ganun din, I
always tell my students you can't understand the Filipino without the Chinese
Parang
or the
mixed bowl
Spanish.
talaga tayo of ethnicities, no?
Pero, in fact, maganda kasi how these elements, the Chinese, the Spanish, the Katutubo, how they interface with each other.
Okay. By the way, Matt, may isa akong nabasang trivia. Si Doc Z is a fluent Spanish speaker.
Oh.
So, talagang Doc Z is a mix of everything, okay? So,
Well, my regret is I never learned Chinese, no? Because I was deterred by all those characters. Akaduling.
Doc, I think a common question ng mga audience, no? And even me, before I took up your class, bakit laging magkatahi ang career ng sociology at anthropology? Kala ko before, Matt, parehas lang to. But Doc Z was able...
Different?
It's different, no? Doc Z, can you share to us what's the difference between sociology, anthropology, and maybe historians? Like, may mga ganun.
Ang historians kasi they're interested in events from one to the other. Events that occurred in the past, maski recent past.
Okay.
Samantalang ang interest talaga ng sociology at anthropology is society. Not necessarily in the past. Maski today.
Maski
Okay,
today.
pero anong kaibahan ng sociology at anthropology?
Yes.
Ang focus kasi ng anthropology, kultura talaga.
Okay.
Sociology is more social structure, social organization. So,
Okay.
makikita mo yan sa approach namin. Sociologists use heavy quantitative methods like statistics.
Correct.
They use a lot of survey methods. Anthropology kasi, like in my case, I wanted to study kultura ng mga magsasaka. I stayed with magsasaka for almost 2 years.
More immersive? Is it, would you say more immersive? Yung,
Yeah, immersive talaga.
I see. I see. In terms of...
Very qualitative. I wanted to observe kasi there are patterns of interaction. Who really are the leaders and why do people follow? Ganon.
Correct.
What motivates people to act? You cannot get that by just interviewing. You have to live with people. Like this thing I was telling about the product development. Yeah, there are a lot of things you can get about products, pero yeah, through surveys. Pero it's another thing to actually see how people actually use a product in their life.
Ooh, it's a good analogy, no? It's a good analogy. Ganun pala yung difference nun. So parang kapag sociologist ka, let's just say it is your career. You're paid perhaps, and your output might be, those surveys that you gather from a couple of data. Pero kapag anthropologist ka, siguro I would say your output, Doc, would it be a paper detailing your findings and your time with the community?
Yes.
No? Ganun pala
Very
yun.
qualitative.
Kaya pala maraming paper yung class ni Doc Z, no? When I was taking it, bro. Parang every other, may paper kami, no? Sige, Doc. Thank you for doing, for sharing that, Doc, no? Dito sa Pilipinas, Doc, what's a pretty well-known maybe institution that is known for doing sociology and anthropology?
UP. Of course, UP. Well, secondarily Ateneo.
Second lang ba tayo doon, Doc?
Kasi ang laki ng faculty ng UP eh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mas mas robust.
Well, Center of Excellence din naman ng Ateneo sa sociology,
Yeah.
to be honest.
I mean, to be fair, University of the Philippines, they might as well.
Dapat lang, di ba?
Pero very deep ang bench ng UP
Yeah.
that is to be acknowledged.
Okay. Sige.
Well, Doc, let's talk about your career now. Was it ever, the end goal at the end? Like we always ask this with our guests, no? Parang, how did you end up here in this career? And was it ever like, was it ever a plan that yes, I'm going to be...
Sabi nga ni Doc Z, tinanong daw siya ng anak niya. Gusto daw niya maging anthropologist. Si Doc Z nag-no agad. No? So we wanna know, Doc Z, how did you get to this career?
At first I thought I wanted business. I was in fact, originally entered into tourism.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But I wasn't so happy with tourism because I noticed ang problema with tourism at the time, mga 70s. Hindi malinaw yung mga kwento ng mga tourist guides at saka hindi rin malinaw what you wanted to project about the Philippines.
Correct.
Oh.
So I felt kulang yung projection about the country in its totality.
Correct.
So kulang. So and I began to realize the problem really is we're not so sure about our own identity as a people. So, and I realized if I want to pursue questions of identity, anthropology talaga, that's what people told me. Identity and culture. And I realized, ganun nga talaga. Like, kasi I noticed tour guides, they bring people around. Spanish ito. Ano talagang Filipino? What are you saying? This church is Spanish, that house is Spanish. So what are you projecting? Tapos this food is Spanish. Ano? How can you attract people if that is always your line? You don't seem to be sure about yourself. So that's why I think I'll enter into anthropology because I want to thresh out for myself what it is to be Filipino. That's why I realized what it is. We're actually a blend of several things.
Correct.
We are.
Actually, the first book I came out with was by chance. So Hilda Fernando asked me to write a book on the 19th century house, which everybody was calling Spanish. So I came out with the book Filipino Social Houses, which became a bestseller. I wanted to point out actually this is not Spanish because I've traveled all over Spain and Mexico. Ibang-iba naman to eh. So,
Ano pala yan? Misconception.
misconception. So now I'm so glad it has become. I mean, this house. People have become proud of this house as well. There's vegan, but there's also Angeles, Gapan. They have these heritage zones where they display these houses.
Yeah.
Doc, actually, I was wondering, this path with anthropology, did it ever like loop back into tourism?
Yeah, because I've always been in touch with friends in tourism because along the way I discovered Eddie Nuque, who was president of the Philippine Tourism Association, Philippine Tour Operators Association, PhilTOA. And his advocacy has been heritage tourism. Because he says the problem with Philippine tourism is in the 1970s, it was focused on sex. I realized that. I was working in Philippine tourism before 1976 talaga. And sabi niya, it's a dead end. It's a dead end because that kind of tourist you'll attract will only be single men. They'll never bring their families. And you will neglect your other resources. So you'll develop your beaches, your golf courses, but how about your products? People will not be interested in your products. And it also gave the country a bad name, which can scar the future tourism destinations you want to develop. So I've been in touch with him, and yeah, he's very, very, very supportive of our work in heritage. Because always I try to connect everything I do with heritage.
Exactly.
Like when we have our field school, one of the projects that students do is actually a tour script for the area. So when we have these field schools, there are several projects that the students do. They're divided into teams. One team is to document the food. Another one may be to document a particular craft. And third always is the tourism script.
Yeah. Kaya pala, Doc, while we were researching about you, I noticed that people or parang museums or institutions are actually getting you as like this expert, about heritage, and when they're setting up that museum. I think yung recent, hindi ko sure kung gaano ka-recent, Doc, pero the Museo de Intramuros, yung kinuha ka nila as an expert there, right? May tahi talaga, may handshake talaga ang anthropologists at ang tourism, in that sense, no. Got it. Doc, siguro kwentahan mo naman kami, as a anthropologist, siguro 1 to 2 projects na talagang, especially in terms of that heritage, na pinaka-memorable sa'yo, nahirapan ka ipaglaban, or
even the impact,
na hanggang ngayon project ko yan. Anong 1 to 2 projects, Doc, na Doc Z was a part of it?
Look, I'm very fond of the cultural labs we've set up in different parts of the country.
Cultural labs.
Yeah, because the idea of the cultural lab is after 1 week of formation on campus with an array of different specialists, we bring our students to the field for 3 weeks. It could be Puerto Princesa, Calibo, Bohol, Silay Bacolod, and this year it will be Tuguegarao. The idea is, study heritage in the field and then come out with a report. I'm so happy kasi nga because of the mga spin-offs na nangyari. So we were able to help. For example, the most memorable, and I keep coming back to this, yung ginawa ni Paolo Palanca, who's not even a sociologist, anthropology student from the School of Management. He discovered kasi the gold filigree jewelry of Bantay, malapit sa Vegan. It was already dying. Paalis na yung artisan. He wanted to migrate already to Canada, si Nelson. Pero he and Christine Chu fell in love with the jewelry, and they advertised it to millennials. They set up their own separate companies, Kayamana and Amami. So they advertised to millennials, and millennials liked it. They liked it. So nakaroon ng booming business for Nelson. So Nelson finally decided, might as well just stay here and train my son. So, tapos maganda pa niyan, it's not static because ang ginagawa ni Paolo, he develops new designs and based on the tradition. Maganda yung spin-off.
And this Paolo is a student of yours? Tama ba, Doc?
No, not anymore. He's already,
Dati student yun.
yeah. He's a graduate of School of Management, like you.
Like me, no?
Yeah.
Ito mo, bro, may future talaga tayo.
No, but that's why the School of Management wants a close link.
Yeah, I totally agree, Doc. Yeah.
They want a close link. Like for Tagagaraw, halimbawa, it will be a close link talaga. In fact, they were the ones who even suggested the site. So we'll be offering 2 courses with sociology and credits, but also at the same time, those courses will be recognized. School of Management, but with management credits, and it will be a joint faculty to. Somebody from my department and somebody from the School of Management will go together with each other to Gagaraw.
Yeah.
That's a really nice experience, though.
Oo.
I mean,
Medyo boring kasi sa management, Doc, honestly. Puro kami, pitch, di ba? Puro defense. Pero...
this puts you on the field.
Yeah, this puts you on the field, right? So...
Maganda kasi you can discover may products na pala na pwedeng
Totoo yan. Di ba?
very serendipitous.
Correct. Itong cultural labs na sinasabi niyo, Doc, no? For example, our audience wants to get immersed in anthropology. Is that a good start? Yung cultural labs?
Pero 3 fields, 3 weeks.
3 weeks na.
So medyo may konting mahalan din. May konting kamahalan kasi obviously you'll be moving to
Yeah.
different places now. But at least it's an organized... You're not just touring the Philippines on your own, di ba?
Stay in a place, nakababad ka doon for 3 weeks.
Parang immersion na 3 weeks.
Immersion
Parang
na 3
ganun, no?
weeks.
I see. Natatandaan ko pa, no? Doon sa... Nag-post kasi si Doc na, uy, thank you everyone. In the end of our semester, nag-post si Doc, sabi niya, thank you everyone for our class, di ba? And hindi ko malimutan, no? Nag-comment siya sa isang... sabi ko kasi, Doc, thank you rin for your time, di ba? Tapos sabi niya, thank you, Lance, no? Here's to more cultural entrepreneurs.
Yes.
Ano ibig sabihin nun, di ba? Doc, marami sa audience namin, entrepreneurs, or even corporate professionals, but what does it mean to be like a cultural entrepreneur? Ano yun? Advocate ka ba? Parang,
No, kasi ang paniwala ko, given the market economy, how can heritage survive?
Correct.
Kailangan may monetary value. It helps.
real talk lang, Doc, di ba? Kailangan talaga eh. Kailangan talaga.
Like in jewelry.
Yeah.
It was about to go extinct. Sayang. That's the product of a long tradition. Wala na lang.
Correct.
Buti may monetary value.
Correct.
So, I'm so glad somebody pwede palang pakinabangan to sell it. Even changing some of the designs to fit a millennial audience.
Correct.
So, may cultural entrepreneurship.
Business acumen.
Or develop a new tourism script for a particular area.
Correct.
That is actually what we tried to do in Palawan eh. Kasi kawawa ng mga tagbanwa, no? Because there's a lot of tourism in Palawan. Kaya lang the tourism is brought from Manila. Diba? And they may mga scripts sila which has nothing to do with the life tagbanwa. What we suggested, what actually some students did is they went to the forest with the Tagbanwa and developed a script. It's a forest tour, mga 1 hour and a half. Walk through the forest, and the Tagbanwa will tell you how to use this or that particular product, this particular tree, this particular sap, this particular nut. So it's a forest adventure. So some students developed a script. Ang problema lang ngayon na pandemic, hindi siya naman market pa. I hope the tour script can be marketed.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, so cultural entrepreneurs, correct me if I'm wrong, though, it's more of like business-minded individuals or entrepreneurs that sell more of the culture. Or
Yes, but dapat with respect.
Yeah.
Dapat with respect for the values of the people.
Right.
Parang di maski paano. Yeah.
Because I was wondering, like, how would you feel about criticism that some entrepreneurs have faced before? Because there's so many businesses now that capitalize on the culture of a certain country or of a certain people. Pero parang ano lang, it's like just for the sake of it. Na they know that it will sell. So parang interesting.
I think it has to be, dapat may dialogue with the locals. Kasi pwede rin mababoy. Like for example, popular ang Ifugao textiles, but what textiles are you gonna sell? You cannot be say, may mga death blankets, are you gonna sell death blankets? Ang pangit naman. Yeah.
Totoo. Makes you think siguro. Parang isang misconception kasi is, for example, when a museum is brought about, parang inisip ng tao, puro historian siguro yung mga taong that built it.
Yeah.
But most probably, based on what Doc Z said, baka meron ding mga business-minded people behind those, no? O make sure natin na sustainable yung operations ng museum.
Yeah.
Diba? Dapat pagpunta ng tao, magbayad siya kahit konti. That way we can preserve, what we're doing here, diba? Or even pagkitaan kahit papano, diba?
Doc, you are specializing on, heritage and the preservation of these heritage, right? Pero we cannot help but encounter different companies that, may want to tear it down to put up maybe, a hospital,
A resort.
a mall, a resort, right? Which is economical in a sense, right? Siguro ang gusto kong tanong dito, Doc, what is that fine line, between balancing these all economical efforts that will give more jobs to the Filipinos, di ba yan na lagi ang ano nila, versus preserving the culture that makes that place, di ba? That Intramuros being Intramuros or Binondo being Binondo, right? How do we find that fine line, Doc?
Mahirap na tanong yan. Pero I think actually, we have to designate zones na lang. You cannot preserve all the buildings in a particular area. Designate a zone. Unlike what they do in China, Shanghai, may designated zones to protect, like the Bund.
Correct.
For example, sa Macau, the Portuguese enclave. Designated zones.
Yeah.
Because, let's face it, property values go up in the city because of population pressure, limited space. So I think you need designated zones. But within those zones, dapat the architecture has to follow particular guidelines. Yeah. And always be open to reuse. Hindi naman pwedeng lahat museum. No way, cannot be. That's so boring.
Yeah.
Dapat you have to think of, if you're trying to preserve heritage, architectural heritage, you have to think about the possible uses. Uses na kailangan talaga ng community. Some, perhaps one can be a hospital, another one can be a restaurant or grocery. Ang daming possibilities.
Okay.
Actually, that's really interesting because, like, as you said, China has like a lot of like old towns. In Europe, you also see a lot of like old quarters and stuff like that. It's actually interesting yung parang yung reusing to other purposes because in Budapest, there are like old houses. Yung mga ancient houses, no?
Correct.
They turn it into what they call, if I'm not mistaken, it's called ruin houses. Basically, that dun sila nagpa-party, ganun. So parang you'd see these kind of like beautiful like architectural houses, but then every night it's like party places.
No, because the big danger in the Philippines, we think that if we just remove everything, that is okay for business. I don't think so, because who will want to visit a place where everything's a high rise?
I agree.
High rises you can see elsewhere. You have to have a sense of place. A sense of place is very important, even in the market economy. You can see that Poblacion. Why do people go to Poblacion despite all the high rises around? They go because it seems so quaint. And we're not even talking about nice buildings now. Some buildings are nice, but otherwise it's the atmosphere. Low rise with a lot of imaginative restaurants and bars. That's where they go.
There's life there.
Yeah, there's life, yeah.
Makes me think sa Filipino-Chinese side, Doc, ang dami ng car manufacturers, but people still want that sense in Banawe.
It's not.
Really?
Yeah, parang everyone still wants to visit Banawe.
I
You know, to get their
actually
cars fixed. Kasi, mas enjoy nila yung parang nakikipag-bargain sa vendor. Uy, ang taas naman yan, di ba? Yung kabila lang, ganito yung offer sa akin, right? So, makes me think, maybe people are just finding that home nga that you mentioned, di ba? In Banawe, di ba? Kung ayusang kotse ang usapan, di ba?
I mean, ako nga, I grew up in Binondo kasi. And ever since, I didn't really think that people would visit Binondo because maybe it's not as, it's not as
Magulo.
beautiful
Oo,
as
medyo mas magulo,
as
yeah.
other cities like BGC, di ba? Parang ang ganda ng BGC. Pero recently, I've been noticing that more and more people are going to Binondo food trips and I'm like, talaga, really? Parang,
Dok,
there's
tandaan
something,
ko dinala niyo kami sa Binondo nun.
uy, may ano
They
rin
took
kayo.
us to Waying. Ay,
Ying
Ying Ying restaurant yun. Yung siomay, napakalaki. Grabe.
Yeah, the widest selection of siomai ever.
Oh my God. I mean, ang ganda, ang ganda. These field trips talaga. I hope mas dumami talaga sa Pilipinas na accessible, especially in Metro Manila, Doc. Pag may pumapunta mga foreigners, we don't even know where to bring them besides
Exactly. Panay Intramuros.
Pera, Intramuros at Binondo.
So many other places in the city are interesting. And problema, like Malate used to be so attractive. Napabayaan. It would have been a nice place because when I was growing up, it was a haunt for artists and fashion designers. Napabayaan. Sayang.
Actually, I came from a trip recently and I talked to like two French nationals. They're here in the Philippines for maybe a month. Then they're asking me, what to do in Manila?
No, I'll tell you something. Ito lang. Now that you mentioned French, tama-tama. Because siguro I have vested interest because I'm involved right now in developing a Quiapo Heritage Zone because ancestral house is there, Bahay Nakpil, which is a museum also.
Yeah.
But the thing is, a lot of Filipinos say, Quiapo, ang dami-dami, etc. Unsafe. Pero guess what? Kinakwento ni Francois Argelis, a Frenchman whose family has a history in the Philippines, mga Burg-Miyay. His family decided to open a pension house in Quiapo.
Oh.
Malapit sa San Sebastian. It was making a lot of money because European backpackers like the French, they want to stay in the heart of the city. That's the way it is in Europe. You don't go to the suburbs when you go to Europe.
Yeah.
You go to the heart. And they liked it. Magulong Quiapo, pero despite that, they felt a sense of place that they were looking for. Now, of course, if you clean up the area, remove the cable lines, clean up the streets, mas maganda pa. Pero I'm just telling you, we have treasures that we're not aware of, which foreigners appreciate.
Yeah. I mean, going back to that story, I was like, Mall of Asia. And I would also say Fort Santiago is like probably the best cultural touch point that they could visit because I couldn't really name off the top of my head.
And dami sa Manila. That's why we came out with this book, Endangered Splendor Manila's Architectural Heritage, in 3 volumes. The first volume came out in 2021. It's about Intramuros, Binondo, San Nicolas, Tondo. The second volume is on the south of the Pasig. It's coming out this year. Yung third volume na rin to cover all of Manila. About what you can visit in each place. Whether the place is deteriorated or well preserved. And we're accompanying that with how the do-it-yourself tours you can make, as well as the food places you can go to.
It's very, very interesting. Doc, baka touchy subject, but how do you think is the government faring in terms of, balancing these? Nahihirapan, di ba?
Yeah. No, pero on the other hand, locally, there are some bright spots. I'm glad, for example, vegan was able to see the potential in protecting all of the historical sites. I remember in the 1990s, I was also involved in vegan. At that time, they only wanted to protect one street, Crisologo. But I'm so glad that the stakeholders realized that there's potential actually in using heritage for developing vegan, because that was the advice of their consultant from the Asian Institute of Management. So vegan prospered precisely because of heritage. The poverty level was pushed down to less than 5% before the pandemic. Now, I noticed there are other places like Iloilo, which is also developing heritage corridors, Angeles City, and Gapan in Nueva Ecija. So there are bright spots locally.
Buti na lang, no? Well, I hope this is sa mga nakikinig, no, this is a challenge to, our government, right? Yeah, yun nga, di ba, yung mga zonal areas, let's respect that. Di ba, alam mo yun, parang, baka next time, subdivision na naman. Medyo mahirap. Okay, Doc, so I was looking, by the way, mga ka-offbeat, no, so, Bahay Nakpil is this museum na tinur rin kami ni Doc Z before. And I believe, Doc, no, this is somewhat related to your family sa parang lineage, di ba? Tama ba? Tama ba, right? And ano yun, bro? Grabing immersion yun, di ba?
Parang saya, parang puro field trip yun.
Sabi ko nga sa'yo, kaya hindi ko malimutan yung klase. Panay kami field trip eh. Doc, can you talk to us more about this Bahay Nakpil, di ba? Which I think Doc Z is I think a board member of the foundation that preserves it, no? Yeah. Pero can you talk to us more about maybe why should our audience visit and whatnot?
Kaya naman. I was born in it, but we moved out when I was 2 years old. Yeah. The house was the house was built in 1914. Like the rest of Quiapo, east of Quezon Boulevard, it survived the bombing of World War II. So it's a house that we're preserving because of 2 counts. So it's a very good example of the bahay na bato at kahoy, which we call Spanish, pero hindi naman. Very good example. It's maganda yung spaces, maganda yung very simple decoration on the transoms. The other reason also is because it's associated with historical figures. Figures important in the revolution. Si Julio Nakpil was the kalihim of Bonifacio, composer siya. He composed a hymn which was supposed to be the hymn of the Republic. Marangal na awit ng marangal na dalit ng Katagalugan o marangal na dalit ng Sangkampuluan. That was the title. In fact, he's recognized as a musical composer. His works are now available on YouTube in 4 sets. Yeah. Tapos, his wife was actually the widow of Andres Bonifacio. So they met in the Katipunan. After Bonifacio was executed, Gregorio de Jesus walked all the way back from Cavite to Pasig, and that's where she met Julio. So for the protection, they fell in love. So they lived in that house.
Grabe, diba? I mean, and now it's like, that's why it's preserved, bro. Diba? I heard, Doc, parang meron ding, with sila, ano ba yun? Gregorio de Jesus, no?
Yeah, she's the one. Yeah. Gregorio de Jesus. Yeah.
Siya pala yun. Wow. Grabe, diba? I think, Doc, when I was looking at yung Facebook page ng Bahay Nakpil, sorry, ngayon, ganun na lang generation namin ng Facebook.
Of course.
Sa Facebook kami, no? So I was looking at it, Doc, and parang there was this post na nakasulat dito, Doc, no? And it's a quote, I quote, "Architecture lost is a portion of a soul of a city that you can never recover or renew." Doc, ano ibig sabihin nito? Right? Pag may pinatay tayong architecture, bakit di na natin marirenew yun? Hindi ba natin pwede i-document yun? Hindi ba natin pwedeng yun? Diba?
Well, you can document, pero iba, architecture kasi is space. You have to be in the space. Okay. Wala na yung space na yun. Paano mo siya ma-experience? Wala na. But of course, I'm not saying all spaces have to be preserved. No? You preserve the more memorable ones. You cannot preserve everything naman eh.
Right. There's actually this building in Binondo. I forget what the name was, pero there's been so many movements to kind of like preserve these buildings to the point na I think currently at least one of them turned into like a modernish millennial cafe in a way to preserve.
Talking about the former HSBC building, which is a cafe right now. That's on Juan Luna.
Yeah.
Binondo is particularly interesting because Binondo was very cosmopolitan before World War II. Not only the Chinese, may American, may Spanish, may German, may French, Scottish.
So isa pang excerpt, no? Tuloy-tuloy ako sa mga excerpts na kinukuha ko dito, Doc. No? Ito naman galing rin sa'yo. Walang pagkilala, walang pagmamahal. Di ba? Parang book title, di ba?
Parang song title.
Parang song title, di ba? Doc Z, you mentioned this powerful quote, I think, when it was the opening of, I think, yung Museum of the Intramuros ka, no? Anong ibig sabihin nito, Doc? Walang pagkilala, walang pagmamahal.
You have to know something before you can really love it.
Wow.
Grabe.
Parang may
Grabe. You have to know
When you fall in love with somebody that you don't really know, di ba?
And does the same go with architecture?
Or with food, or with fashion, with anything, yeah.
Okay. Kaya, honestly, Doc, parang minsan nga, it's harder and harder to become that Filipino, no? Because, wala lang, parang hindi na namin alam kung ano yung pwede namin ipagyabang sa mga fellow.
That is also what saddens me about students. Hindi nila alam. Lalo na ngayon, in this world of globalization, a lot of students have traveled already. So, they want to know what is it we can be proud of. O maski they haven't traveled, makikita naman sa Facebook comparisons with other countries. So, they want to know.
Totoo yan. Tsaka parang, medyo stigmatized na kasi pag kunwari, Manila, agad nating parang, we laugh at it. Traffic, corruption, mabaho, diba? So, I want to sort of, is there a way we could shed a new light to that? Hindi pa kailangan mawala yun. Totoo naman yun corruption talaga, tsaka traffic. Pero, ano naman yung new light, diba? That's what we want to bring up. Paano natin yun malalaman?
Well, there are nice developments. Like, I think the National Museum Complex is something really to be proud of. The 3 museums are beautiful,
Yeah.
Sana mas dumami yung ganun na projects na daw.
Yeah, I wish the government could also do its part by burying the cable lines. Ang pangit-pangit na they really uglify the city. Parang pa ni Mayor Villegas yan, 1960s to bury the electric lines.
As someone that is also overseeing some heritage zones, ito bang mga cable lines na to, Doc? Minsan nakakasagabal yan sa mga plano na gusto niyong gawin.
They're also dangerous for people, especially when it rains. Natatakot.
Tsaka very vulnerable, no, Doc?
Exactly. Natatakot. I had a friend, basta mulan, hindi na siya lumalabas Kasi pag may baha at sakaling may linyang naputol, paano?
Actually, yung discussion natin about, we're not sure how to kind of present ourselves or project, or it goes back to the question of identity. And this, I guess, is it okay to kind of reference your book, yung
authentic but not exotic.
Authentic
but not exotic, no?
Yeah. In the book, I think I read a few excerpts. You kind of describe how lowland Christian Filipinos don't really know. Parang they don't really know how to express themselves or how to explain their identity to other, even like our Asian neighbors or Americans.
Admittedly, Doc, pati kami, hindi namin alam paano. Diba? It's very hard not to just to explain our identity.
Alam mo, isang malaking problema rin kasi there's a tendency to stigmatize anything that came from the Spanish past. Mahirap yan A large part of our identity is Spanish in origin, so you have to accept. Of course, there are deficiencies, there are defects, there are abuses. That's why we have the Katipunan and the Revolution. That's why we have the museum in Quiapo to show the glory of the Revolution. Pero there are also contributions, naman. That those contributions have to be acknowledged so that you have a more holistic view of the past. And so you'll be prouder of who you are.
And it takes an intentional effort, Doc.
Yeah.
Alamin mo rin itong mga bagay na to. Pag-aralan mo rin.
In other words, what were the achievements of the Filipinos over the past 400 years? Meron din naman. Despite colonial rule, may achievements. That's what I'm trying to project. May achievements.
Which makes it so ironic because a lot of our generation they will spend hours just to know about this Korean pop band, no? And they will say, uy, he's going to the military to serve just because of this and that, diba? When we couldn't do that for our own Filipino heroes and achievements.
Actually, that is one of the things I noticed about Korea. Speaking again of branding and heritage. Before I used to watch Korean films sa cable TV, I used to watch either their films about contemporary life, mga romance, or else yung kanilang historical dramas. I noticed they're so self-confident. They project their historical dramas, and they know their historical dramas will click, like Jewel in the Palace. Ganon. I noticed we're not so sure what to do. Well, there was a Filipino film I liked, Amaya. Pero I noticed pag historical, panay No Limit Tangerine na lang. Can there not be other scripts we can develop about our past that will appeal to the young and to an international audience? I'm sure there are.
And do you think that's happening, Doc, because of a lack of knowledge by the filmmakers?
I think so. Also, may prejudice na basta Spanish past, dapat abuses agad.
Alam mo, Doc, gusto ko sumegue dito. Parang sa isang interview mo rin, sinabi mo, history and these cultures cannot be looked at in a lens of black and white lang.
Yeah, in a lens of today. Kasi from us, sabihin, sana they should not have committed those things because it's so obvious na mali. Pero I'm saying, we're looking at it from today.
Oo nga, no?
Like for example, sabi natin, how come education was so limited? How come they had a hard time starting public schooling in the 19th century under the Spanish? Well, public schooling was so new in that period all over the world. There was no such thing as public schooling before the 19th century. So this is already an achievement for the Philippines to have a network of schoolhouses. And they're so beautiful. That's another thing we're trying to protect.
Yes.
Ang ganda ng mga stone schoolhouses from 1880s sa Kalibo, sa Taal, sa Loay, sa Bohol. Ang gaganda.
Yeah. Ano tingin mo, Doc, is the reason why tayo mga Pilipino, we often want to look at things from that good or bad, this side versus that side. Similar to our elections, Doc, di ba?
Yeah.
Hindi mo maiwasan. Hindi mo ba pwede tingnan yung dalawa as two independent or
Yes.
Bakit ganon? Like even in architectures, even in our history, we always want to look at it in a black and white morality kind of manner.
Yeah, parang it's easy eh.
Yeah, that's fair.
Tsaka mas madrama, no? Parang mas maraming kwento pag
But I think life is gray eh. May gray zone yan eh.
parang we need to be comfortable that, may ano talaga, may complexities in between, di ba?
Actually, Doc, it's kind of interesting we're talking about, like, how do we present ourselves, how do we project ourselves? Because this brings me back to our conversation with Pepe Joc, no? He's a director.
Pepe Joc, no.
Right.
Of course,
Yung junior, Doc.
I don't know.
Si Pepe, hindi na kami
I know.
yeah.
So anyway, he talked about the film industry and how the Philippine government themselves, parang, they didn't really give a chance for Filipino filmmakers to put out their films, and they would rather go for, like, the Marvel films of this world, or yung so parang it's kind of interesting how it shows yung parang the anxiety,
Yes.
or parang we don't know how to present themselves even in that big a sphere. And it's not like the Koreans who double down on their content and promote their culture to the world, diba?
Sabi nga
We keep consuming eh.
Sabi nung filmmaker na yun, Doc, no? Meron palang quota yung Korean film industry na you need to push out
Kailangan
these
local.
Korean films, local. Unlike us, baliktad. Kailangan mas maraming global, di ba?
Yeah.
Bakit ganun, Doc?
Well, I was also fascinated by the way they decided on promoting their cultural industry. Because they realized they're already exporting automobiles, television. They wanted to enter into the cultural industry. And so they planned carefully precisely what they would project, films, songs, dances.
Yeah.
And when they project their songs and dances, they bring together a team of specialists. So when we watch these Korean pop singers and pop dancers. We think it's also spontaneous. Yes and no. Actually, they've been trained carefully by a team of professionals. How to dance, what songs to sing.
Right. And it's how it's not only how Korea projects itself to the world to make it more marketable to other countries. It's the people themselves that are more proud to
Patriotic.
be like, Korea.
Patriotic.
Ganun.
Maganda because you can make may Korean brand pa rin naman eh. I mean, you can feel that there's something Korean about it.
Yeah. Ay, nako. I mean, I just hope while we're doing this episode, dumami yung mga ganong career professionals that have that expertise and perspective of what Korean culture or what Filipino culture is. Kung ngayon kasi, kunwari, Doc
Yung
Z is an expert, but Doc Z is just one person, right? Ang daming projects dyan, right? So, how do we propagate that? Padamihin natin, di ba?
Well, actually, I think there has been a change already.
Bettering. That's good to hear, Doc.
For example, we're talking about textiles, mga hand-woven textiles. I think people now appreciate hand-woven textiles from the Philippines. Dati kasi minamatas batui. Pero now, I notice, people are interested in buying inabel from Ilocos or wearing cloth from Lumad in Mindanao. May change. In fact, I'm so happy now, I was telling you informally, my students during this pandemic have been helping Dita Sandico project in these indigenous weaves from the Philippines. Because what they did was they organized shows for her online called Zoomista events. Because that has helped create a market for indigenous textiles.
Yes.
Which creates actually jobs for poor communities in the Philippines.
Right.
And I'm kind of encouraged that there has been improvement.
Yeah.
In your book, it's curious to parang you had a question there where you asked, what does it mean to be truly Filipino? And you kind of broke down even tinikling or what was it, adobo. Parang you said that it's not technically authentically Filipino, that parang it's an amalgam of different kind of cultural influences from China, Spain, and whatnot. What for you does it mean to be truly Filipino?
No, adobo. Adobo is definitely iba. I mean, may Spanish influence dyan yung the use of bay leaf, laurel, no? May Chinese influence, the toyo. Pero the idea of marinating meat in vinegar is so Pinoy. So what happened kasi, if ibang lasa ng adobo sa Pilipinas from whatever you taste elsewhere. Kasi nagahalo yung suka, yung toyo.
Kaya pala tayo may adobong puti, di ba? Na pure vinegar lang. Sa atin pala yun na, Doc, yung puti, yung vinegar.
Ay, mahilig ang Pilipinas sa vinegar.
Same zest.
That is what makes us different from the rest of Southeast Asia, the suka. The Indonesians abhor the idea, what? Cooking your food in vinegar. My Indonesian friends are shocked. What? You like to cook your food in vinegar?
I guess the reason why I was bringing that up, yung parang I guess how I received it was parang like the modern Filipinos isn't assured of their identity because their identity is based on an amalgam of different cultures and influences.
Yeah.
Pero parang napaisip ako kanina na parang isn't that the same? Wouldn't you say it's the same for the Singaporeans, for example?
Well, not only Singaporeans, but even Indonesian culture is actually halo-halo, or Malaysian culture. We think na pure because we have not really studied their cultures well enough.
Right.
Kulang na conversation tayo. Pero halo-halo din ang Indonesia.
Ang hina pa natin sa culture, bro. As in, we really need to
We have to communicate more with our Southeast Asian.
Yeah.
Kaya lang, the reason why we have this identity crisis because it's East and West.
Okay.
Sa atin kasi, sa Indonesia kasi, a lot of their influences came from India and from Islam. So parang bagay, pero there are also clashes within their system.
Okay. Sige, Doc, itong next part, para to sa mga audience na interesadong pumasok sa anthropology career or maybe sociology or any cultural career. I guess first, Doc, in a reality sense, maybe in percentage basis, Doc, what do you do in your parang day-to-day na kailangan nilang malaman? Kasi baka akala lang nila puro excursion to, puro immersion, di ba? Let's get real, Doc. Ano yung ginagawa niyo in day-to-day? And obviously, kasama na doon yung mga immersion experience.
Well, one, of course, is of teaching, no? But the other one is research. Research projects.
Yes.
Yeah, quite varied.
I see. And
Yung immersion na yun is part of the project.
Okay.
Your project as an anthropologist will likely call for some immersion in a particular community
Correct.
for a given time.
And would you say, Doc, your main parang goals to do always is communicate what you've learned, right? And like in your case, you're teaching it. Research about things that we don't know yet, diba?
Yeah.
Add new knowledge to the existing, right? And then parang historian na dating, no?
Well, scholars the same. I mean, you do research and then you communicate. Yeah.
Got it.
Ang historians will focus on the archives, documents. Anthropologists will focus on lived experiences of people.
Misconceptions, Doc Z, about your career. Misconceptions na, people wanting to enter this career need to know about first.
Well, misconception. I think the usual misconception na panay buto.
Panay buto? What does that mean?
Owns, akala kasi anthropology is all about digging.
Oh, really? May ganun ba?
About bato.
Di ba archaeology?
Archaeologists. I see.
Yeah, buto at bato. No, but actually, no. I mean, archaeology is part of anthropology.
Oh, it is.
Oh, okay.
It's one specialty within anthropology.
Okay.
Anthropology is also biological. It has biological anthropology.
Yeah.
There are 4 fields in anthropology: linguistics, biological anthropology, archaeology, and cultural anthropology. They're all supposed to be integrated together.
Yeah.
Although ang talagang field ko is cultural anthropology. But I had to be exposed also to archaeology and biological anthropology.
Yeah.
Because when you discuss culture, there are topics kasi that come up like anong kaibahan ng kultura sa lahi, difference between culture and race. And it's from our study in biological anthropology that we realized culture is not the same as race. Race is a variation within a species.
Yeah.
So for example, dogs, diba? There are different races of dogs. Human beings are different races. But that's not the same as culture. Culture kasi culture has to do with language,
Yes.
with symbols, with values.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That's so interesting.
So yeah, that's a big deal. Pero anthropology is really holistic. It's the most holistic of all the disciplines. Kasi may biological part, may ecological part, may linguistic. Yeah. Holistic siya.
In terms of corporate professionals listening to this, Doc, meron ka bang tips? Or sige, let's say na-inspire sila sa episode na to. They wanna help out. How can they start? They wanna help out, Doc. In the world of everything that you mentioned, preservation, di ba?
Yeah.
Communication, di ba? How can they help? With the money that they have or the business acumen that they have, right? How can they help?
I think they should help local efforts. Like yung sinasabi ko, artisanal crafts that are in danger of dying. Right now, I think we need actually to map flavors in the Philippines. Local flavors. Ang problema kasi, there are a lot of products that are being produced in the countryside. I noticed at food, which are not labeled. There are all kinds of good honey being produced in the Philippines. But I don't see any labeling, any branding. That's really bad. I mean, how can the manufacturer earn? Like, for example, I bought very good honey from Louisiana in Laguna. Pero where's the label? I want to know something about the place. What makes this honey different from another place? Because if I know something about it, then I'll be willing to give you a premium, a premium payment. Like 2 months ago, I bought honey at Farmers Plaza. Well, at least the honey said it was made in Quezon province. Pero walang description. What makes this particular honey different?
Correct.
Saan siya nanggaling?
Parang yung branding na nangyayari is, oh, this is the Tagaytay honey, or this is the Batangas honey. That's it. Galing na to, diba?
There are all kinds of honey in this world. They're all competing for space, no? Tell me what's particular about your honey, then I will pay extra for it.
I think one city that actually is thriving, I'm not sure, no, is Baguio. In terms of being able to define.
Yeah, pero kulang pa rin eh.
Kulang pa rin.
In other words, what would make the strawberries in Baguio different? Ano labeling? Or to push it further, what makes the mangoes of Cebu different from the mangoes in Guimaras, different from Zambales? That's where I see a need for the anthropologists to work together with the entrepreneur. And yet, there's so much poverty in the countryside, diba? Our farmers can earn more from this. That's being done in other countries already. We're not doing it here. Yeah.
Dok, tingin nyo, paano natin i-bridge yung mga entrepreneurs na in the Makatis of this world to the anthropologists? Is there a convention or is there an initiative
or resources?
Diba? Like this one, Doc, this was brought to us, we were brought together by a class. Diba? And maybe by this podcast.
Right.
Pero para sa mga iba, narinig na episode to, they want to be connected to people like those. What's the bridge there?
Siguro through professional organizations, siguro. Baka through specific outlets like sa food, for example. So, yeah, pwede. Yeah.
Got it. Dapat maganda tayo ng mga organizations talaga.
Well, technically, even interacting with your local tour guide if you go to a different part of the country, that's sort of...
Tour guides also need training in their own particular heritage. They don't know enough. Actually, tour guides can be the best salesperson for their locality. But they have to know their locality well. Dapat alam nila yung mga kwento.
Ito, Doc, bonus questions na lang to. So, tingnan natin kung ma-add natin to. No? But okay, Doc, bonus questions, and we would like to say that these are questions na medyo kwentuang casual lang tayo. Parang boyabunda. Okay, sige. You wanna take this, bro? Number 1.
Sige. Comment from Ateneo student. He's old, but he has a very sharp memory and would test you if you really read and understood the reading, lalo na if you're recording it. What's the secret to being so active and sharp as an old man? It seems that you're still full of vigor to explore the world and the Philippines especially.
I can attest to this, Doc, this comment from a student, no? Because I was, minsan iniisip ko, paano kaya kung hindi ko muna isabit yung papel? Or mahuli kaya ako, Doc? Lagi. There's one way or the other where he would post the next day in Facebook, guys, I read the paper. I'm like, shit, I gotta submit, diba? So, sobrang sharp ng mind yung Doc, no? You still remember those specific moments that happened during your classes. Anong sekreto mo, Doc, on keeping that healthy and
well, you have to move regularly.
Move regularly.
You have to exercise daily. That's important. To keep your body in motion, to keep your brain circulating. Yeah. And I think diet for me is important. It's central. I discovered this years ago when I was in Hawaii. My American doctor was urging all of us, his patients, to eat more vegetables and fibers. It helps. I'm not a vegetarian, but I appreciate the need really for a very simple diet. Yeah. I mean, I love my extravagant feasts, no? Pero, yeah, it helps to eat plenty of vegetables, fruits, unpolished rice, and exercise daily.
Yeah. Doc, paano mo naman na sometimes I was telling Matt the other day, alam mo, Doc Z, no matter how advanced he is in his age already, he still seems so curious about going to places, talking about new things, and how do you fuel that curiosity every day? I know it's probably a line part because it's your work, right? But how do you fuel it every day? Visiting these places, working with these heritage zones and whatnot.
Well, I'm impressed with the creativity of people. I admire people when they're creative. Yeah, I love it. Yeah.
parang may bago silang nadadala lagi.
Yes.
That is so
There's something new to learn.
Yeah.
Well, everyone can learn from, how Doc Z sees creativity, right?
I love it when people are creative. Yeah.
Ito next question, Doc Z, Earlier sa offbeat episode natin na pinag-usapan natin that, you're coming from that Nakpil family line, And according to our research, diba, could be a direct descendant of who you mentioned earlier, the composer Julio Nakpil and Gregorio de Jesus, diba? Doc, can you tell us more about what it feels like to be in the shoes of someone who's associated with these, iconic names?
Parang in the lineage
of this history, diba? Nakakatuwa lang na we're also in front of someone na sa lineage ng mga, diba? Maybe Bonifacio and Gregorio de Jesus, diba? What does it feel like, Doc?
Lolo ko sila, okay, fine. Yan lang. Yeah.
Wala naman siyang, in your profession, you never
No.
treated especially because of that.
No. It just happens, It just happens.
Yeah, I think last question, Doc. In the current Philippine society, di ba? Natatandaan ko, Doc, yung exam mo sa amin, final take-home exam mo sa amin, was that magsulat ka ng essay in the scenario where you are in your neighborhood and there is like a church there, diba? Na very heritage. Pero biglang may lumapit na conglomerate that wants to shut it down for their purposes. Now, the challenge for this student or us, is give me the reason and give me the ways you will try to preserve the church within that neighborhood.
Okay.
Doc, in that sense, anong industriya right now napapansin nyo among all of the cultures that you've studied na medyo panay ang, pag mga ganong takeovers na mga conglomerations, I was just thinking sa fast fashion, Doc, di ba? Mga Zara, mga ganyan, di ba? Dahil sa mga fast fashion na to, medyo hindi na nasusuportahan yung mga industriya ng mga local weavers natin or local, So, alin, Doc, yung pinaka napapansin nyo?
Well, ang problema kasi it's developers. I think developers and heritage advocates need a dialogue.
They do. Yeah.
Kailangan. They should not... I think we in heritage advocacy should not see developers as an enemy, as a threat. The same way, those in development should not see heritage as an obstacle. We can work together naman.
Yeah.
Because there have been some good examples like sa Bigan or Iloilo City, where heritage and development have gone hand in hand very well.
Yeah.
Because if you make a place really interesting, unique, it will attract people.
Kailangan talaga may conversation. May dialogue.
It's really interesting because I recently just came from a trip from Batanes, and they have a rule there, according to the tour guide, na the establishments that can be built there are only from the people who live from Batanes, or at least have Ivatan blood.
Yeah.
So parang kung, for example, a conglomerate like, sabihin natin, SM, di ba? They go to Batanes, they can't just do that.
They cannot.
Yeah, they cannot just...
Masisira eh.
Which is a good rule, and I think that's a good, start.
Yeah.
At least if there is an establishment that is built, at least it's from one of the people who was from there, and at least the money goes back to them.
Development is important, but you can't allow just any kind of development.
Yes, correct.
Because we're talking about sustainability. Diba? Yeah, we're realizing now many of the problems we have right now is because development is not sustainable. We're allowing all kinds of wrong developments. Like for example, Batanes, there was one politician who wanted a casino. Sira na.
Inisip ko lang kung in-apply yung rule na yun sa Manila. Meron bang Manila lang pwede gumalaw? Hindi ba lahat ng tao na sa Manila? Like all kinds of...
Mahirap yun sa Manila. But I think it should be a dialogue between different parties. What kind of development do we really want for the city? It has to be by area. And let's respect that agreement. Yeah.
So for example, when BGC was built, for example, I hope there was like a discussion
With
Bonifacio Global City.
Okay.
BGC, diba?
Yeah.
Parang when that was built, tingin mo, Doc, na-consult kaya yung mga tao dun sa Taguig?
You know, there's something I regret sa BGC. They should have preserved the headquarters of the Philippine Army and the tunnels. That could have been quite an attraction, the tunnels.
There were tunnels.
It's just so sad.
I didn't even know that.
Yeah, I mean, di ba parang, this is what they were saying earlier, na it will forever be gone eh. Kapag tinanggal mo, look at us, the next generation, hindi na namin talagang, we don't even know it exists.
It's part of the story of the place, di ba?
Exactly.
Dapat may parang, kung sa Egypt, there's something called Egyptology where there are like expert Egyptologists that you can take courses on it in like college and whatnot. Dapat parang may course na rin yun dito sa...
I am not too familiar kasi with the exact thing because there were army heritage advocates within the army. There are people who are saying we cannot just erase all the army buildings of the past. We have to preserve some that have
100%.
resonance. Yeah, that's what they wanted. But I don't know what has happened to that clamor. I'm not sure about the tunnels either. But there was word that there were some that they had dug for training of whatever. Pero sayang. Well, I'm glad, for example, in San Juan del Monte, San Juan City, they have tried to recover part of the water deposits on the Spanish period because it makes the place more interesting.
Yep.
That's character.
Okay. Doc, you know what? We got it. Thank you so much for taking us off the beaten path, Doc Z. Ang dami nating na-cover, Matt. And I'm very, very sure ang dami natin matutunan. Doc, as we close lang, no, can you let people know what you're excited about right now na pwede rin nilang abangan? No?
Well, I'm excited about our cultural lab in Tuguegarao City in this July, this August.
Yeah.
Because although we've been working with John Gokongwei School of Management for years, this one will be different talaga. It will really be a very tighter partnership between my department, History Department, Fine Arts, and John Gokongwei School of Management.
Very, very interesting. I think that Tuguegarao, parang home of the longganisa yun. Eh.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. But the big problem for the entrepreneurs is how are you going to transport the longganisa to Manila? Make sure it's...
Really, that's still a problem now with the many, freight services that we have. Really? Okay. So, excited na kami doon, Doc. If ever nagbukas ng Doc or anything, where can we know more about this Tuguegarao Cultural Lab?
Well, it's online. My department is putting it online.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Sige.
Doc, how can people contact you in case lang na talagang na-inspire sila, no? Or is there any way that they can hit you up and have you out for an interview as well or conversation?
Email. Yeah. Email.
Okay. Email is still the best way to go. Diba? So yun. Okay. And yeah, I think that's about it, Doc. Thank you so much for your time. Project Offbeat audience, thank you for tuning us to our on-site episode with the legendary Professor Dr. Fernando Zialcita or Doc Z. Maraming salamat everyone and stay tuned for the next episode. Thank you, Doc.
Yay.